Dozens of major corporations, as a result of Trump's tax bill, paid nothing in federal taxes.
What you don't say is that everybody paid less in taxes than they did under Obama, or they would under you piece of shit. But I bet you're paying more than you thought. Well, what are you saying? You thought you were going to get a bigger price break. Screw you! Now, I wanted to get into the top socialist lies, top 5 myths that people...
Good.
I guess these just continually... Let's just start with this. Bernie Sanders town hall at Fox News. It personified everything wrong with the left wing. Let's start with this.
I happen to believe, Joe, that we have an absurd tax system. And while millions of people today are paying actually more in taxes than they anticipated, Amazon, Netflix, and dozens of major corporations, as a result of Trump's tax bill, paid nothing in federal taxes. I think that's a disgrace.
What you don't say is that everybody paid less in taxes than they did under Obama, or they would under you piece of shit. By the way, did you notice he said dozens of corporations?
Dozens.
Just run a quick search and see how many corporations there are in the United States. Hint, it's a lot more than dozens.
If we missed a couple of dozen, that's okay.
This is the dishonesty. They're paying more than they expected because they wanted an even bigger tax cut that you and the media deceived them into thinking they wouldn't even get. Even the New York Times did an expose on this. Many people who got a tax cut didn't actually believe that they got one at all. Most people saved money, paid less in taxes this year. The middle class benefited from the tax cut. Everyone did. But I bet you're paying more than you thought. Well, what are you saying? You thought you were going to get a bigger price break. Screw you! This is how socialism works. It deceives people into thinking they're worse off than they are by lying to them and then using that misery to get elected, promising to solve everyone's problem with free money. And this was... We'll get to the top 5, I think, the biggest myths, the most pervasive myths. All this was reiterated. There was an article this week announcing memes.tv. Did you see that? It's an online socialist media network who, without a hint of irony, it'll be a paid subscription service.
Stephen, that's a tax.
So I went to their site to see what they were about. And again, let me know which socialist candidate you want us to live stream next week, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. Sanders, Harris, Klobuchar, Buttigieg, Warren. Went to their site, Means TV, to see what they're... No surprises. I felt like this segment was long overdue. Let's cycle through the top 5. All right, let's get to it.
Yeah.
Number 5 is that there is no class mobility. The cards are stacked against you. This comes directly from the new paid subscription socialist network.
You only really have like so many options. You can go to the factory, you can go to the college, or you can go to the army.
What do I have to do so I can get into a position to where I can chase what I want to chase versus surviving?
Oh, I feel like I have no options. And you proceed to name all the options. 3 unbelievable options. By the way, the offshoots from those 3 options are probably at least 3,000 options. Like, I could work at a factory and work your way up to vice president, work your way... Factory, this was in Detroit, this network, where a UAW worker cost the company an average of over $130,000 a year.
Whoa.
I could go into the military. Oh, you mean you could get tuition paid for? Work your way up to, I don't know, officer? Not to mention serve your country? Yeah. Or I gotta go to college and choose... any of the hundreds of degrees available there? This is like, I only got 3 options.
No, I can't do anything.
Why are you complaining?
Sounds horrible.
Because the options I got are only infinity. I don't understand.
There are 3 options to on-ramps, basically. There are 3 on-ramps to any option you want for the rest of your life.
Okay. This idea that there is no social mobility in the United States. The cards are stacked against you. Over the course of their lives, 56% of Americans will find themselves in the top 10%. 73% will spend at least more than a year in the top 20%. Okay? So this idea that there's a static 99 and top 1% ruling class, it's just not true, particularly in the United States. And this brings me to myth number 4, that capitalism only benefits the wealthy. We hear this all the time, that America sure is a rich country, but for most people, it's terrible.
My mom actually told me, like, moving to America just, like, made everything worse.
From where?
In America, I feel like money is always the problem and the solution at the same time.
Are you high right now? Seem to be just doing worse and worse, and nobody really seems to be able to do anything about it.
Better and better.
You know, why do our parents work all the time, and then it's still hard for us?
Because you spend too much.
Like, a system in place that keeps us there.
And to find out about that system, like, it's only $9.99 a month. I buy your cars.
I buy your cars.
They're not going to stay poor for long.
Honestly, here's the thing. No system is perfect. But name me any system throughout the history of mankind that has pulled more people out of poverty than the free enterprise and a capitalist system.
Venezuela. They killed them all.
There you go. You know what? Here, let's do a mental exercise. Everyone watching, pick a system, any system right now. Think of it in your head, okay? No, that's the answer. Let's just go under Trump because they try to amplify this with Donald Trump. Look, people are worse off ever. Yeah. We have the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. Record numbers of workers returning to the workforce. Highest job labor force participation rate. And by the way, even with all of that, we actually have both the lowest layoff rate and the highest amount of unfulfilled, meaning available jobs, since the Department of Labor began recording the statistics ever. It's time to toss your hemp noose over the basement pipe because I only got 3 options: college, military, or being an entrepreneur. It's like I could go to school, study in maybe like the STEM field, or get on Shark Tank. What the f? Like, we need a new system.
Right.
Hit the notification bell, by the way. Join up at loudequator.com/mugclub. It's more necessary than ever. Half Asian lawyer Bill Richmond can tell you. And of course, subscribe to iTunes. And hit the notification bell. I already said that. And rate us on iTunes. It doesn't really matter.
Hit the bell.
Here's one of the biggest ones. You've heard this a lot, right? The idea that there's no wage growth. One of the most common myths is that wages have remained the same. If you factor in inflation and you look at U.S. where people are working more, but they're not getting paid any more money, here you go. You hear it all the time.
And about half of Americans don't own a stock, a mutual fund, or any it means nothing to them. So they'd rather get a wage increase.
The key thing that we've been looking at for quite a while that doesn't seem to be moving too much is wages.
Yeah.
2%. The trouble with 2% is 2% kind of just sucks. Wages growing at 2% is not enough to make anyone feel the job market boom.
First off, I don't want to go ad hominem, but is her chin penciled on? It's like the Burgermeister Meisterburger. It has 2 very defined lines. Okay, this is just as problematic, to use their word, as the wage gap, the idea of 77 cents in the dollar. That just compares women make X, men make Y. One problem with computing wage growth, the way that the Bureau of Labor, the statistics do, is they do average hourly earnings. It's going to get a little nerdy. Let me try and go through this really quickly. That doesn't take into account lifetime wage growth. I highly recommend you check out the sources in the overlay that we bring up here right now. Let me distill it for you. When you take into account individual wage growth as calculated by the census, their current population survey, okay, those models, it's actually closer to 5%.
Which doesn't suck.
No. Average individual wage growth is always higher than the simple average hourly earnings growth. And there are a few reasons for this. And I want you to do your own mental exercise because anecdotal obviously doesn't necessarily prove a point. But the empirical data, I believe, will match up with your anecdotal experience. So anyone out there right now who's done a job or been in a career in the same field of work for more than 10 years watching right now, okay? I'd like you to comment below. If you have been doing the same job or working with the same company, same field of work for 10 years, I want you to do some math. Have you only seen a 2% wage growth? I would challenge anyone out there. Lower earners at the beginning of their life, by the way, they tend to have the most wage growth. As people get older, they get wealthier, the percentage of wage growth is less. So if you're seeing that sort of pay bump bottom out a little bit, that now it maybe used to be 10%, 12%, now it's 2%, that means you're probably being paid pretty well if it's over a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, on top of that, wage growth just hit a 10-year high, despite all the models predicting the exact opposite, and it seems like it's likely to keep accelerating. All right, listen, frankly, much wage growth, you're going to be so tired of all the growth with your wages, you won't have room. Your wages will have stretch marks, okay? Here's a second lie. It's really stupid, but I'm going to point out why I think you'll realize it's stupid on its face, but you often don't think of it this way, that wealth inequality is a huge problem.
We want to deal with the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality in America. Very few people think it is acceptable or moral that the top 0.1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%.
Here's what I call a stupid exercise. If I doubled every single person right now, watching, listening, doubled all of our incomes tomorrow, every single one, wealth inequality would increase. Would you be pissed? Would you prefer to live in a place like Cuba or Venezuela, where people make whopping $30 a month in Cuba? The problem isn't poverty, the problem is wealth inequality. And I know that there are some nations in between. I'm not saying your only choice is the United States or Cuba. Generally speaking, socialism simply socializes mediocrity, poverty. Matter of fact, every study that we have available shows there's no correlation between wealth inequality and the poverty rate. Usually as wealth inequality becomes big, as that gap becomes bigger, conditions of poor families have actually improved. And here's you know, it's not so much a lie that they push. Let me set this up with a fact. Socialism has never actually worked. Okay? Never. And they always try to claim that it's never been tried properly, or where it has been tried properly now, they've pivoted, and this is only the last 10 years, to the Scandinavian countries that they're all socialist. Here you go.
What happened in Venezuela? They call that democratic socialism. But
he looks like he's masturbating on a subway.
The problem is, though, brothers, that any time there's been the attempts of ordinary people to engage in self-determination, they can get crushed by external nations. Look at U.S. policies toward Venezuela has been very, very ugly. Nicaragua in the same way. So we've never had a chance to really pull it off. So it's only been a movement so far.
Well, so long as we know what democratic socialism is, and if we know that in countries in Scandinavia, like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, they are very democratic countries, obviously.
America to look more like Scandinavia.
That's right. That's right. And what's wrong with that?
Well, there's a lot wrong with that. First off, the snus.
The snus?
It's the snooze.
Snooze?
Snooze,
if
man.
The tobacco goes up your nose.
Oh, never mind.
That's snuff.
No, snuff goes in your lip. Snus goes up your nose.
Snooze goes here, snuff goes here.
I don't know anything about tobacco outside of cigars, which, by the way, ironically come from a lot of these crap-hole countries.
Oh,
they try, Nicaragua.
That's the one silver lining.
They try to say Venezuela, a truly socialist, and, by the way, oil-rich country, kind of starting on base 3. Only failed because of U.S. policies? Truth is, Scandinavia, we did a whole segment on this, so I'm just going to sort of brush on this. Scandinavian countries, actually, they built up their wealth under free market economies, and right now they're actually moving much more toward free market capitalism, despite their incredibly small, homogenous populations, by the way. And keep in mind, their top corporate tax rates actually lower than the United States were under Obama. We're actually going their direction now, finally, for the first time. And something else that is remarkable to me, did you know that when Scandinavian people move to the United States, they have higher standards of living on average than those in the Scandinavian countries? In other words, Danes in the United States have it better than Danes in Denmark. Swedes in the United States have it better than Swedes in Sweden.
Without the high suicide rate.
Is there a super high suicide rate? I knew it was Japan.
Suicide. Well, I know Japan, but I thought
Norway.
Norway, yes.
That's just because of the weather, and they all have to watch Let the Right One In.
Yeah, and by the way, how many times do they have to come on camera and say, Bernie, please stop pointing to us as socialists?
Yeah.
We're not socialists.
They have a lot of, they have a social safety net, which, by the way, is why cars, for example, I think in Denmark, most people can't afford used cars. You can go to lotoscredit.com. Yeah. We wrote an article about this not long ago because the taxes are unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's a huge burden on the middle class. That being said, they built up their wealth under free market economies. So you can't claim that a country, if the United States, for example, tomorrow became a socialist country, would you say that we became the world's greatest superpower under socialism?
No.
Of course not.
No.
Obviously, I would say that the facts are on our side, okay? Because I just listed over a dozen. But I know that both sides argue they're on the side of truth. Okay, let's put that aside for a second. One thing that can't be denied is that even in theory, capitalist free enterprisers, the conservative worldview can only function if an individual feels empowered. And I know that Bernie bros are going to say that that's a lie because of the system, man. All right, I know. The fact is that the conservative message is predicated on the idea that individuals feel optimistic about their opportunities in future. Yeah. Socialists can only remain in power by convincing the entire population of hopelessness. Conservatives have to campaign on, hey, anyone can make it in America. You're good enough. Democrats and socialists but I repeat myself, have to campaign on, you can't make it. You're not good enough. Others are going to win, you'll lose, and none of it is in your control because it's all a part of the system. It is a selfish appeal, and certainly right now in the United States, it's not based on truth. Right now, in an economy with the lowest unemployment, highest job participation, least amount of firings, most amount of jobs available in decades, they're still selling you propaganda that you couldn't possibly make it without them. And I'll come out and say it. In 2019, only the weakest among you buy that lie. If you look at all of the prospects I just listed out there and you don't feel hopeful in any way, there's no hope for you. You lost hope long before you made that walk to the ballot box. That's my biggest problem with socialism. Hey there, if you like this video, subscribe or click one of these videos playing in a box. You know what? Hit the notification bell because subscriptions don't really mean anything anymore, especially if you're not 18 or older, at the very least logged into YouTube as 18 or older, because sometimes people are 25 but they don't know how to use the YouTube system properly, and then just hit the notification bell or you hate yourself.